All right, so let me give a introduction. Hold on a second. Sorry, I'm like still modeling with my interface. All right, very good. Welcome everyone to our CS seminar of, I think this will be the last one for the semester. Still thanks everyone for sticking around for our last week of the semester. Today it's my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Ehsan Hoque. Ehsan is an associate professor of computer science at the University of Rochester, where he co-leads the HCI group there. He received a PhD from MIT Media Lab, has been working on effective computing, social behavior modeling, and apply that to enhance human ability, right? So he has made various practical contribution to a lot of stuff that we are using, like, for example, Microsoft PowerPoint. Ehsan has received numerous awards and recognition over the years. He is NSF Career Awardee, MIT T35 Young Investigator Award from U.S. Army Research Office. So the list goes on. So today it's very excited to see the kind of latest work that Ehsan is doing in the space of healthcare, in the space of elderly care and management. So very excited. And Ehsan's wonderful presenter, so just looking forward to it. So without further ado, Ehsan, please.
All right, thank you. It's so glad to be here virtually. And I have prepared a brand new talk. It's mostly with a bunch of demos, videos, and some intuitions and some stories to share something that I haven't shared, at least some of the information, as well as I'll give you a brand new demo that we haven't showed to anybody. So hopefully that will work and we'll get to see what it does. But before I get started, let me ask a quiz, which is, how many of you are in your 20s, 20 to 30 here? From your thumbnail, I can see there are a couple. So if you're in your 20s now, you have a 50% chance of living more than, any guesses? You can write on the chat if you like. How many years you think you may live?
80s?
80s, okay, that's one guess. It's actually better than this. It's actually 100. All right, so I think there are some people in their 40s. So if you're in your 40s, what do you think that you have a 50% chance of reaching what age? Any guess? It's 95, so which is also pretty good. And in case if you have anybody who are in the 60s, you have a 50% chance of making up to 90. Of course, these are numbers from the book, and you have to take it with a grain of salt. But the take-home message is that people are living longer. And being able to live long is a gift. One disclaimer that this book makes is that these numbers are based on developed world, like the West. If you are from the other part of the world, these numbers are different. And if you bring in other equations like race and socioeconomic background, there's also widespread differences. So the question many people are asking is not just to age well, but how do you age equitably, right? And this is a big question a lot of people are working on. I don't have an answer, but today in the context of computer science, I'll try to provide some intuitions for some of the research questions that I've outlined here. Older adults, they engage with technology very different than anybody else. So there's an opportunity to think about how they do this. And also, if you want to include individuals with disabilities as a priority group, that can help with what we build as well. In computer science, we often build algorithms because we want to publish a paper. But then we also need to think about how do I deploy this? And when you bring the deployment in mind, the complexity increases. So how do you go about solving it? And finally, this is what I said, deploy the work. So I have 3 live demos to show you today about some of the stuff that we have deployed. So in terms of the outline of today's talk, I will talk about one project. It's about neurological care available anytime, anywhere. And this is primarily in the context of Parkinson, which is the fastest growing neurological disability. So imagine now you can now open up your webcam and perform many of the neurological tests and get an assessment automatically. So I'll give you a live demo of that. I will also talk about end-of-life communication. So imagine as a patient, if I have few months to live and my doctor needs to give this information to me, how should they give it to me so I still understand the reality and opt for the treatment option that's consistent with my values? So how do you do that? And if there is time, I'll also talk about aging and engaging, which is about elder people due to immobility, or let's say COVID-19, they're isolated. Is there a way to help them improve their social skills? So that's the agenda for today's talk. We'll see how far we can go by 11:35, which is when I plan to wrap up. So that's me, and that's the title of my talk. Before I get to the agenda, this quote kind of sums up my intellectual curiosity. Anybody knows how old is this quote? Or any guesses?
More than 100 years?
Sorry?
More than 100 years.
Yeah, you're close, 1927. So 1927, somebody talked about the way you talk to each other follows a pattern, something very predictable that's written nowhere. We all understand it. And that's the code that I want to be able to understand using computation as a lens. So just to back up a little bit, tell you more about my journey as a computer science student and now a faculty. So this was my PhD thesis that was inspired by helping individuals who may have Asperger's syndrome. So imagine if I have Asperger's syndrome, as a result, I have difficulty engaging with others. I don't know how to make eye contact, or I don't know when to stop talking and end up monologuing. Is there a way for me to get some help with an automated system who would give me feedback on some of my social skills, right? So let me give you a video. Let me play a video of a student going through the intervention. You know what, I'm gonna reshare this and make sure I have reshared the audio. Just give me a second. Yep, share sound, optimize, so good.
Please tell me about yourself.
So, I am a junior at MIT and I study biology. I am involved in a variety of activities. So, the biggest part of my week is crew. I'm a varsity coxswain on the heavyweight men's team. And let's see, so I'm also involved in synthetic biology research. I work in the Weiss lab here at MIT.
So this was an interaction with a real person in the lab setting, and the person came back and interacted with an automated system for an hour. Sorry, let's go back here.
And so biology here at MIT.
Why don't you start with providing some details about your professional background?
An undergrad student at MIT studying biology. I am currently a junior, and so will be working the year after I graduate, which is next year.
And after 1 week, the same counselor.
Well, please tell me about your background.
So I am a junior studying biology at MIT, and I am part of the crew team. I'm a coxswain on the heavyweight men's team. So what I do is I coordinate practices on the water, and also I coordinate races. So I call tactical moves. I'm the only person who is actually facing forward in the boat.
Yes.
So,
Did you notice any movement or improvement? I see a head nod from Peter. So yeah, there's some clear improvement in terms of the gestures as well as being more expressive. So we were able to quantify it, published a paper. And when there was a press article by Tech Review on this, so far I've received close to 5,000 emails from the general public saying that I would love to use this technology. How do I do that? So that was my PhD work, but then fast forward, we built a system called RockSpeak, where anybody from any part of the world can go to a website and turn on their webcam and practice giving a speech and get feedback. So let me give you a live demo of what that looks like. So if you go to rockspeak.com, I have it open, so I'm going to click. If I can spell RockSpeak. Come on. All right, so here I click on practice now. It's asking for my permission that in practice mode, I consent to donate my data for research. I say yes. To turn on this other webcam. All right, I'm giving a speech or giving a talk rather at Johns Hopkins University virtually. I wish I was there in person. I haven't tested this demo in a long time, and hopefully this will work and we'll get the data back. All right, so right now it's uploading the data in the cloud. It will take a minute or two to get it back. But in the meantime, I'll show you what it looks like. So this is a recorded version of somebody doing this. So this is a video, I can play it.
So I've been on the paleo.
Goes on if I want, I can. This is the summary. This person spoke for 83 seconds. These are some of the, let me see if the purple line correspond to the smile. So she did not smile much in the beginning, then she started smiling. The yellow line correspond to our movement. So she did not move much, but there's something started happening. We can look at volume modulation here. You can look at transcript of what she said and some of the filler words she might have said. And this is a word cloud of some of the things she said. Let's see, not this one. So and if she likes, she can click here. For example, you can ask me this question. This graph is good, but it doesn't tell me what I need to do, right? So if she wants, she can actually click here and create a link that she can share with people. And people can take a look at that video and provide some comments. And they actually appear here. So if you come here, these are some real people providing some comments that AI cannot yet do. And once they receive the comments, we can automatically sort them based on how useful they are, whether they're positive versus constructive. So they appear right here as well. So mine probably should be done any moment now. So that's the framework. But one thing you notice that as you share your video, like here, people are writing comments. And if you think about yourself as a node and other people who are also writing comments to you as another node, and the feedbacks to each other as edges, the entire interaction becomes a network. And when you do that, you can use many of the tools from network analytics to understand how people are interacting online, who is interacting with who, and how that's tied to the performance and creativity. I'll come back to this. Hopefully this is gonna come back. So that was the demo. So here, I had a promotional video, but I think I'm gonna skip it. So we have a bunch of papers where we kind of looked into the network effect of how people interact with each other. So you can go take a look, but this talk is not about that. This could be a separate talk on its own, but just want to give you a brief taste of that project. But as Chin Min said, that this patent that we produced has been licensed by Microsoft PowerPoint. So as I am using PowerPoint to give this presentation, I could get feedback on the system that we have built. So that was nice to be able to deploy this. So that's in a nutshell. I'm going to go back to what I promised, the 3 projects. But before I do that, I just want to share a personal story. So this was 2008. I was a PhD student, first year PhD student. And that's when my mother was diagnosed with final stage cancer. So I immediately dropped out of the PhD program and spent that 1 year being her primary caregiver. And that was a really good experience to be able to take her to the hospital, interact with the doctors, manage her medication. And when she passed away at the age of 48, she left my younger brother behind. He has a diagnosis of autism and Down syndrome, and I became his primary caregiver. He's 21 now. This is us a few weeks ago. So in case you're wondering why I work on building technology to improve people's social skills, my brother is the motivation. But going back to my mother's case, when she passed away, she was going through the third line of chemotherapy. That means we completely misread what the oncologist was telling us. The oncologist kept on saying words like, she has an extensive disease. Every day is special. But we just didn't get it, and we continued to push for aggressive chemo. That had severely impacted the quality of our life. Deciding when to stop your treatment, it's a very difficult decision, but we wish we had that option at that time. One of the side effects she had due to cancer was involuntary tremor of her body, also known as Parkinson. So after several weeks of attempting, we were able to see a neurologist, and the neurologist gave us a medication called levodopa to manage her tremor. And that worked like magic. The tremor went away, and we were so happy. Then after several months, the drug stopped working. So those are the two things that stayed on my mind. I came back, finished my PhD, but I started to wonder, okay, is there something we could have done different? So going back to this outline, so back in 2016, I found a neurologist in our university who was very prominent, and I just wrote to him randomly saying that I want to have a conversation. And when I went to his office, he just threw a big book on the table saying that this is the Bible of Parkinson, and whatever that we do with Parkinson is all pen and paper based. In fact, he shared a slide that I really appreciated. Like, this is exactly what's going on with Parkinson. Like, they come to the clinic, do some neurological test, and that's the only information we have. But we want to be able to get information on the other things as well, in which we have no visibility. In fact, if the only medication that's available is levodopa, and if you want levodopa to be effective, you need to fine-tune that dosage. That means we need to know how well they're responding to the medication and use that to be able to fine-tune it so the effect of the medication lasts longer, which was the case with my mother. We didn't fine-tune it. So from that conversation, we thought about, okay, we got to do something about this. But before I tell you, this is briefly about what is Parkinson. This is the fastest growing neurological disability in the world. There are around 6.4 million people with PD, and it's going to double by 2040. There's no cure available right now. The best possible treatment is 50-year-old. One of your faculty, Dr. Suchisaria, uses an example that I really like, that imagine diabetes, but 50 years ago, you'd have to go to the clinic to perform your glucose, right? And using that, you manage your symptom. So Parkinson is like diabetes, but 50 years ago. So I think we need to be able to do something right now so that people can manage that symptom very well. And if you think about the access, it's fairly limited. In 23 African countries, the average population per neurologist exceeds 6 million. And even in the United States, 40% of PD patients over 65, and most of them are from lower socioeconomic background, do not receive care from a neurologist in the USA. So from that, we actually built a system called parktest.net that's available online, where people can go and perform a set of neurological tests. And there's also one HCI challenge, is that many of these individuals are so severe, they cannot use the keyboard or mouse. So how would they go about navigating a website and perform 20 different tasks? So we had to solve that. And imagine as they go from one task to another, some are something like this, using your hand, some are using your expression, some are using your speech. We can quantify them fairly well using computer vision as well as machine learning. So there's a big opportunity that nobody was pursuing to be able to deploy this framework in patients' environment. So we get data from where they are. So we get a huge amount of heterogeneous data and use that data to be able to train an algorithm. So what is the big picture? So individuals with Parkinson's disease, go to the website, follow the instructions, and these are the different instructions. And I'm going to show you some videos that we have collected using the frame, and you can see there are huge variability. This is finger tapping. This is fist open and close. These are all individuals with Parkinson. This is a task called pronation supination. This is a task called postural tremor. Once again, individuals in their own home doing this. And there are also tasks on expression where you have to maintain certain expression like disgust face. Smiling. Computer is frozen. This is a disgust, or not disgust, raising your eyebrow and down.
20, 19, 18, 17, 16, 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9.
Sorry, I think videos are lagging, but you get a sense of limb movement task.
1, 2, 3.
There are tasks with head movement. So we have a wide variety of tasks for which you have collected data. And we have around 1,000 examples of age-matched PD versus non-PD videos. Sorry, individuals, we have a lot more videos. So from there, we have built algorithms on all of them except eye gaze. And with the time that I left, I'll walk you through of how they work and what we have done. And the idea is to be able to analyze all of that and give feedback to the individuals with Parkinson. Now, you have seen those videos. Anybody works in computer vision here? No, but you can tell some of the grand challenges there, right? So the data are all over the place, difficult lighting conditions, hands moving in and out of the camera. Often they don't follow instructions. We ask them to do something 10 times, they will do 7 times, 8 times. The cameras are all over the place as well. So that is a problem, and something that's prevalent in machine learning. For example, if you want to train for cats, this is what the training data looks like. But then in reality, when you try to deploy this, this is the data you deal with. In fact, I was going to give a shout out of 2 people from your department, others who is not here in the call, and Suchi's area. They have been working on this space. They talked about ensuring safety and reliability tasks, like how when you deploy, the data set could shift. In fact, there's one line that I really like, is that it's unrealistic to assume that data from all possible deployment settings are available upfront. And that's a good assumption. In our work, especially with Parkinson, we said that, but what if we could? What if we could, part of the development of the algorithm, we could get all the variety by using HCI as a principle and get the data upfront and build the algorithm and find a way to deploy this. To further demonstrate the difference between deployment and development, let me just show you a clip. In computer vision, one of the state-of-the-art algorithm is called open pose. So if you click here,
Open Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style. Open Gangnam Style. Gangnam Style.
So in our case, we said, all right, you know what? The first thing would be, let's just try what exists on the data that we have collected. So this is an individual who doesn't have Parkinson on a lab setting. doing the task, and we did a good job tracking them really well, so that we were encouraged by it. So this is an individual with Parkinson doing this at home, and you can see that it stopped working. There is one other individual with severe Parkinson. This is the best algorithm in the computer science community, which is not working well given how messy the data is. So I'll play one other video of a female. You can see it's even worse for her. So this is not encouraging, right? So we collected a huge amount of data. We went with the best algorithm that's out there. It's not working. So what do you do? So I'll show you a trick we tried, especially for the motor task. So these are the tasks we had. So we have a video. From the video, of course, some individuals are going there to turn on the webcam, and then they need some time to go back and do the task. Once they finish the task, they go back and click on stop record. So the video contains all that noisy stuff too. So we built an algorithm that can automatically eliminate the unnecessary or irrelevant video footage. Once that's there, we can do a spatial segmentation. So all the stuff in the background is blown out. So we are working with a clean signal. And from there, we just tried a simple computer vision algorithm. It's called motion magnification. So in other words, let's say I have pixels in an image. I'm just going to multiply it by 10, 20, 50, or maybe 500. We'll just amplify what's there. And once you start doing this, you start to see some of the patterns that are previously invisible. So we just tried that and performed Fourier transformation and just tried a simple machine learning algorithm to classify between Parkinson and not Parkinson. And we do a fairly good job in detecting between Parkinson's and non-Parkinson. So that just kind of go back to see when you have the data, we know this is the reality. You can use some of the constraint to be able to drive the features of the algorithm that we built. One simple example is head movement. Anybody knows who this person is?
Michael J. Fox.
Michael J. Fox. Yeah, so you're right. So Michael J. Fox got Parkinson when he was only 27. And that was unfortunate because he now has to live his entire life with this condition. And this is in an interview, he's not even talking. And you can see all these movements that are happening that he cannot control. So from there, we had this intuition is that perhaps there is a way to quantify the way they're moving their head, which is not voluntary. And perhaps there might be something there. So it's just a simple algorithm from the face. We can track how well the face is moving. So head, so my video stopped working. So let me get the other video. So I can move my head in 3 different directions. So I can go here, that's x-axis. I can do this, that's y-axis, or I can go forward or come back. That's my z-axis. So these are the 3 axes for which I can get some metrics given a frame. So if I have a video, I can plot a graph. And once you do that, we just perform a Fourier transformation on this. And these are the 6 different movements that we can track. Any guess as to which movement may have a lot of details about whether somebody has Parkinson's or not among the 6 different variables? Any intuition? Is it TX, TY, TZ, RX, RY, RZ?
I would guess TZ.
TZ, okay, that's your guess. Any other guesses from anybody? It's actually TX. So we were able to see that the way they're moving their head left and right has a lot of information whether they have Parkinson's or not. And we can do a fairly good job in being able to track that. So that was nice to be able to get a new information in terms of how they move their head and certain direction of the movement has information about whether they have Parkinson's or not. One of the projects we looked at was with facial expression. So here, remember, we had them do different type of expressions. So here, in this graph, we have AU12. That means action unit 12. In other words, my lip corner pull right here. Right, so how well you're moving your lip this way. So using algorithm, we can track that fairly well. So in other words, whether they're smiling or not. So this is where it's 0, and this means high trigger. So they were asked to smile 3 times. So you can see they started smiling, and then they went down, started smiling, went down again. So this is with individuals with Parkinson, and this is with individuals who don't have Parkinson. So you can see there are some differences. And when you showed this data to neurologists or collaborators, they immediately said that this means they have a lot more flexibility with non-PD. They have a lot more modularity when they're using their expression, simple like smiling. They have a lot more control over the muscle versus individuals who have Parkinson. They don't have a lot of flexibility. So what does it mean? So imagine that hundreds of people are taking selfie these days. And when you take a selfie, what do? You start to smile, right? And the camera is clever because the camera doesn't just capture a frame, it captures a video of a couple of seconds. And from that video, it gives you the best frame. So imagine if you give permission to your camera, so as you hold your phone to take a selfie, camera can analyze the characteristics of your smile and give you a referral in case you're showing signs of Parkinson. So that would be a nice application of this in a passive way. So we did this work and we were able to do a fairly good job in recognizing whether somebody has Parkinson's or not by looking at some of those expressions here. One final algorithm I'll tell you about is one, the speech task, where we had people perform a sentence that the quick brown fox.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. The dog wakes up and follows the fox into the forest. But again, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
So I don't have time to get into the details of this, but by analyzing what they're saying and how they're saying it, we were able to do a fairly good job in recognizing whether they're showing Parkinson's or not. And one implication of this is as we engage a lot more with Google Home or many other devices like that, perhaps there's a way to be able to analyze some of the speech patterns and give people referral as to whether they're showing early signs of Parkinson's or not. So this is an ongoing work through an NIH center that we're fortunate to establish at the University of Rochester. In fact, Sue Cesari is part of the center as well. So we'll be pushing this work for the next few years. But in the meantime, I will show you what we have in terms of pushing some of the algorithms as a system. So here, once again, this is a demo site. This is not what the doctors or the patient would see, but I will perform some of the tests right now in front of you and see how well it works. I'm gonna have to stop my camera so it finds me here.
In this task, you will make the biggest smile that you can, alternating with a neutral face, and you will do that 3 times, like this.
All right, so let's move on to the next task.
In this task, you will make the most disgusted face that you can, alternating with a neutral face, and you will repeat this 3 times, like this.
All right, so I'm going to do a disgusted face. Stop the recording, go to the next task.
In this task, you will move your eyebrows up as high as you can, and then down as low as you can, 3 times slowly, like this.
All right, so let me do that.
The second part of the first task, make sure your face is still within the record frame and just recite this sentence. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. The dog wakes up and follows the fox into the forest. But again, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. The dog wakes up, follows the fox into the forest. But again, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So I am done. I'm going to show some analysis. We are working on adding the motor task as well. But right now, not the source. If I look at this, it's going to take me a minute or two to get the data. In the meantime, I can probably take some questions. I think Ilya asked a question. Fastest growing because Ilya asked the question whether it's growing because people are living longer. I think based on my neurologist friend, it's because people are living longer because it's linked with aging. And it's also, there's an environmental factor because it's a man-made disease. It's something that we invented with the Industrial Revolution. So with the climate change, with the pollution, everything is contributing to it. Nobody knows exactly the reason for Parkinson. There's some speculation about environmental contributing to it, but it's still ongoing work. And Peter talked about, can we have recorded presentations? We have the capability. We didn't enable it because it cost us money to do the analysis, but hopefully the one with Microsoft, you should be able to use it for free if you have subscription to Office. So it's analyzing right now all the audio and video. So right now it will only tell me whether I have Parkinson's or not. But we're also working on quantifying the severity of the movement. So you get a score from 0 to 4. 4 means very severe, and 0 means not severe. So based on the facial, so face is the most, let me make it smaller so you can see. So it says there's a 70% probability that I may have Parkinson, which is a fairly low number. And from the speech, it said there's 33% probability. Speech is a noisy signal. The face is the more reliable one. And according to the face, there's a 2% probability that I have Parkinson. So we have this framework deployed. We are now working with the neurologist to see what's the right language to use to give people feedback. There are 2 use cases. One is that anybody should be able to do this as part of their health checkup every 6 months on their own. And if they're showing signs of Parkinson, how do you give this information to them? So that's one use case. And the other use case is, what if I have Parkinson? I need to be able to manage my symptom. So I need to be able to do this as many times as I wish. So how do I do this from home and be able to control the data and share it with the neurologist? So those are the 2 use cases that we are toying into, and we are working on adding the severity symptom as well. Any question before I move on to the next project, real quick?
Sure. Go ahead, gentlemen.
Oh, I was going to ask from the chat. I think there's one about any sense of the error rate in all these diagnosis and screening.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, the question goes back to, if we make a mistake, who's going to take liability? Because you know that algorithms will never be 100% accurate. There's always going to be some error. And that's where we're working with the legal team, as well as neurologists, to think about how do you frame the language so that we can mitigate some of that harm. And we're also looking into their zip code, where are they located? If they're in a place where they're far away from a neurologist, maybe we can be a bit more aggressive the way you formulate the language. Perhaps if there is a place like Rochester that has hospitals nearby, perhaps we could be a bit more subtle about the language. So we are working with this, with the nuance that we're going to make mistakes, but we still want people to know in case they're showing signs of Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm. Hi, this is Russ Taylor. They're very, very interesting what you're doing. I was wondering, well, there are two questions. One is, can you say more about validation? I mean, giving a percentage, yeah, how are you validating your percentages and your conclusions? And I guess the second question, it sounded like you're still working on, is a huge issue here is explaining why you came up. The computer needs to explain why it came up with that percentage likelihood. You tell someone they've got a 20% chance of having Parkinson's, you can easily send someone into a panic.
Right. So,
and is that significant? I mean, this is fascinating. Can you just expand a little more on clinical trials and so forth? And
right. So, as I said, this was a demo, so I would never show the probability. And in fact, when we showed this demo to our neurologist friends, they had the same thing to say, like 20%. What does it mean? How do I interpret this? So this is more from the geeky computer science community, like from just interpreting the raw output of the algorithm. But when you communicate with patients or neurologists, we're going to have a different language.
Right. Well, even for clinical trials, how have you done a clinical trial, or are you trying to get one, and how have you designed the trial?
Right. So this is part of a $10 million NIH grant. So we have a center called Parkinson Disease Research. So that's all part of this. We have 50 individuals with Parkinson that we're tracking for 4 years now. So they all are using this. So we have their data. We are tracking them through time. And all the data that we have collected, 50% of them, not 50, I think 30 to 40% of them are labeled by neurologists. So we are using this as a ground truth to be able to train the algorithm. And once you find algorithm, we also work with the neurologist to see, okay, what do you think? What's going on? So it's just an iteration, and hoping that through that iteration with the medical stakeholders, we'll get that right.
Okay. That's in a way not completely satisfactory, but that's also true of a lot of medicine these days. But thank you. This was a very, very interesting section of your talk.
All right, thank you. I'm gonna move on to, well, thank you for the question. These are good questions. And some we don't, as a computer scientist, it's easy for us to say that we don't care about clinical trial. We don't care about the other things. We just care about the algorithm. But we should be thinking about those things, and we should get it right and make sure that medical professionals could use it appropriately without any negative harm. I had one other thing on the topic to talk about, but I'm running out of time, so I'll just briefly touch on this. I know that it's a Zoom meetings could be a lot. So I have a question for you. What percentage of final stage cancer patients leave doctor's office without understanding their prognosis? Any guess?
90%.
9, that's too high. That would collapse the medical system here. I think one study reports 68%, and that is very unfortunate because these are the people who have the most pressing need of this information so they can make the right information about the diagnosis. So we've been working on modeling end-of-life communication, and we have been very fortunate to work with oncologists as well as folks who work with the medical communication research to model this. We have collected around 400 unique conversations between final stage cancer patients and 40 oncologists. And all the patients are dead by now. So they are final stage cancer patients. We looked into they came to a clinic, had a conversation, counseling, and we recorded that conversation. So these are a few questions we asked the patients as well as doctors. You notice that there is one question that we asked the patient that, what do you think your doctor thinks that you're going to live 2 years or more. And we asked kind of similar question to the doctors, like, what do you believe are the chances that this patient will live for 2 years or more? And when there is a discrepancy between these two responses, which is what the doctor thinks and what patient thinks doctor thinks, there is a discordance. We know there is a problem there. These are the conversations where information did not transfer. So based on that metric, we can divide the 400 conversations into conversations where information flew through and the other type of conversation where information did not transmit. And based on that, we start to learn, okay, what's going on in this conversation? Why aren't doctors able to get this information across? So we found two things. One is when doctor lectures their patients, communication breaks down. So this was intuition, but we were able to validate this in our data. And we also noticed that when the doctor used dynamic sentiment in their transcript, the way they speak, like positive in the beginning and then positive as well at the end, the communication was, information was transferred. So I had a bit of slides here on the algorithmic contributions of how we get lecturing, but I'm going to skip all that and perhaps just give you a live demo of how we do this. So that was a video, but let me just try to be brave and give you a live demo. I think people like it when they're a live demo. All right, I'm going to have to wear this so it doesn't track.
Hi, my name is Sophie. I am a computer character. I may sound choppy, but I'm still able to have a conversation with you. I just moved back into the area from Florida about 2 weeks ago. I was recently diagnosed with lung cancer and finished radiation about a month ago. My pain seemed to be under control for a while, but it seems to be getting worse now. I'm meeting with you today to help get some questions answered about my options and my future. One thing I've noticed in the last few weeks is that I haven't been sleeping very well. Most nights I have to take medication for my pain. I'm not sure if it's only the pain, but I keep waking up at night. Do you know why I keep waking up like this?
It's likely that given your diagnosis, you can have sleep problem.
I see. It seems like my pain is the root of my sleeping problems. Do you think having stronger pain medication would help with that?
It all depends. Given that the medication is not working for you, I may opt for some pain medication.
I guess it's just something I'll have to live with. You know, I'm in a lot of pain, and the lower tab just isn't working. I think maybe I need something stronger for my pain.
I think, yeah, we can certainly do that for
I
you.
see. For now, I'll stick with my current medication, but we'll let you know if the pain starts getting worse. Let's talk about my test results. I received my test results yesterday, but I didn't really understand them. Could you explain to me what my test results mean?
Your test result shows that your disease is progressing, and that's not good news for you.
Okay. I still don't quite understand the test results. Could you please explain in simple terms?
Your test result shows that given this kind of diagnosis, patients who have this similar symptom could live up to 6 months or less.
Okay. What do you think this means for me in the future?
Right now, I will prioritize spending more time with family, making memories, and controlling your pain.
I'm not entirely sure I fully understand what this means for my future, but I want to be prepared for the worst and to spend time with family. How long do you think I have left at this point?
I would argue, given your diagnosis, it's probably 6 months or less.
I see. I want you to be honest with me. How long do you think I have?
So it goes on like this, so I'm going to stop it. But you can imagine it's difficult for me. I'm not a doctor. Doctors are supposed to have this longer conversation. So you get, let's say if a doctor is trying this, you can see that how fast this spoke. So I was speaking in a moderate scale. I did not ask a lot of questions. And right now we are trying to quantify the type of questions, like clarification questions versus open-ended questions versus close-ended questions. Open-ended questions are good, and doctors should be asking more. This tells about the turn taking, how well the turn taking taking place. So if I click here, it tells me exactly what was the turn about. And if I take it, takes me there. This talks about my sentiment trajectory from what I said, the text. So you can see that I ended on a happy note or positive note, which is how it should be. So this is more of like a prototype at this point. We evaluated this with 10 oncologists and I got a lot of feedback. We are working on iterating it further and hoping to run a pilot study sometime in the summer. One good thing about this technology is all online, so it's just a browser. So we can deploy this outside of the United States or anywhere else where they may not have a lot of resources for this kind of training for the doctors, how to give bad news in a graceful way or in a respectful way so that the patients can offer the treatment option that's consistent with their values and be ready for an personal and intimate experience like death. So I had a lot to talk about, but given where we're at 11:40, maybe I'll just stop right here and acknowledge my team who does all the work and open the floor for questions.
Wonderful talk. Thank you, Ehsan. And then I think just open the floor for people to ask questions. Any questions from the audience?
Hi, I have a question. So thank you for the wonderful talk. I wanted to ask about the first part of your talk, the Parkinson. I have seen some articles using virtual reality to both for assessment and rehabilitation of these patients. And I have seen like some controversial outcomes, like there are some pros and cons, but things like personalization of those environments and also the ability to test things that because of safety reasons, you cannot test in real life, gives some benefits for virtual environment for these patients. I wanted to know if you have also tried that and your insight. Thanks.
You mean using virtual reality to be able to, I'm trying to get a sense of the form factor of the interaction. So the patient will be wearing some kind of virtual reality device?
Yes.
Okay, and can you tell me more? So let's say I'm a patient, I wear the device, I see a doctor.
Not for the second part, for the first part I meant, for the Parkinson.
Right, so I'm just wondering how would a patient use virtual reality? Like the patient would use some kind of device and they would see a virtual doctor, right?
No, so these systems have some sensors and some visualization, so it can track basically also your movement of everything, your head, your hand, and also it can so that is for assessment, and also in the virtual environment it can help to adjust the gait, like a balance and stuff like that. There was a article on Nature I recently read that virtual reality for gait and balance in Parkinson's disease.
Right, so I probably should go and read that article. On the high level, I just don't feel comfortable putting a bulky headset on somebody who has Parkinson. And also as they have movement on their own, that will be captured on the device itself. And I like the idea of giving them feedback on their gait. So if I can see how well I'm walking and getting some live feedback, then maybe I need to move my gait and then I do this. I think that's a really nice application, and there's a lot of promise for. There's a lot of work done now, even on smartwatch. Like I'm wearing smartwatch right now, and that's controlling. That's measuring my tremor all the time, and through that you could get a proxy of the UPDRS score. I know that some of your colleagues, like Susuchi, worked on another problem where they looked at smartphone. From the smartphone that you have on your pocket, based on your micro movement, they could quantify a proxy of the UPDRS score. But I need to perhaps read up a bit more on the virtual reality and get a better sense of the form factor. With the current form factor, I worry that it's very bulky, and I wouldn't want to put a 70-year-old who is having a very difficult time to manage this symptom wear something heavy on their head.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Or I can go for one. So Ehsan, thank you for the wonderful talk. I think that's very inspiring. One thing, obviously, we can talk more offline, but one quick question for you is, for your Parkinson sort of screening diagnosis, you have multiple tasks. Do you do some joint sort of assessment? What if there's a discrepancy between assessment from different tasks?
Right, that's a great question. So for everybody, I mean, let's say I perform 10 or 20 tasks. Some data might be very reliable, some data may not be reliable. So if I look at one task at a time and analyze it individually, that can penalize that person. So what if you could get, like if I have a really good, reliable facial expression data, I can add a lot more weight to it. But then if I'm doing this from a noisy environment, as a result, my audio is not that great, have lower weight to that. So yeah, you're right. So we're working on an algorithm like this, like multitask learning. It's a perfect example of that. Like when you have multiple of this task, when do you prioritize depending on the data that you have? So it's ongoing work, but you're right on the money with that question.
Thank you. Other questions from the audience?
Yeah, I have a question. So, like, what are some of the guidelines or protocols when you are interacting with some sensitive populations for data collection specifically? I mean, like, how do you pose sensitive or personal questions, keeping their state in mind? Like, who do you talk to kind of come up with the language, the right language to interact with people?
Right, that's a good question. I'm assuming that you're a student. I'm so happy that you asked that question, because it's often something students don't think about. So in our case, we worked with the doctors. We went to the clinic to see how the doctors are conducting the visits, what is the language they're using, and learn from them. In many cases, when you are doing this, we realize that many individuals cannot use their keyboard. So we designed the website so that they should be able to navigate the entire site just by pressing the space bar, and that's it. Also, we went to many group homes of individuals and to collect data. And some of these individuals are so severe that they could not even perform the task. And we had this difficult situation. Okay, they did not participate. Now, what do? You still use the data? Do you pay them money? How do you make them feel good about themselves, even though they're on the severe spectrum of Parkinson? So there is a lot of these things we had to learn and navigate and be respectful of individuals who are doing their best to provide the data, but just unable. Similarly, we are working with other countries. Like right now, we are piloting in China, as well as Bangladesh, where we're trying to get data from different countries so that our algorithm has characteristics outside of the United States. And again, that's another different culture on its own. So, so there's also a big learning curve there.
Thank you.
maybe we'll take one more questions before we wrap up.
While you get the question, I just want to say that you have a great medical school. In fact, my collaborator for Parkinson used to be at Johns Hopkins, running the movement disorder division before he moved to UFR. I'm very envious of the amazing things that are going on at Hopkins, and you're fortunate to be there and have access to all these great folks.
Can I ask one last question? So again, thank you for a nice talk. I appreciate that you did something new for us and include a lot of demos. I was wondering on the last part you talked about, the end of life communication. It seemed like your focus was really on analyzing the sort of communication style of the doctor. But is there any effort in looking at sort of improving the virtual patient, how realistic their first of all, how well they understand what's being said to them, even just from a speech recognition point of view, and then also are their responses somewhat realistic?
Right. So we are collaborating with Len Schubert, who is an advisor of one of your faculty, I think Ben Van der Meek. So he's our language expert, and they are focusing on many aspects of how good are the responses. The speech recognition does fairly well, but again, when you provide these responses, how appropriate are those? How well the conversation is going? Do I have a temporal understanding of the conversation? Am I able to use something you said and then be able to use it to synthesize my responses? So we are looking into that as well, and it's ongoing work.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, because I think to me that's like a very rich space. You have speech understanding, character generation, modeling, how to manage the interaction flow and content. That's like very rich.
Right, and I wish we had more resources and funding and students to get them all, do them all.
Yeah. Wonderful. So that's just thanks, Ehsan again, with virtual files and collaborative variable. But yeah, Ehsan, thank you very much for this wonderful talk. I think, well, at least I learned a lot, and just look, forward to just having more conversation offline about potential collaboration and stuff. But yeah, I think it's very impressive. Thank you again for taking the time to speak with us again today. So with that, that will be our seminar for today.
Very great talk.
Yeah. For those who are interested, I see the other Ehsan posted a link to the Nature article.
Thank you, Ehsan, for the article, and thank you, everybody. You have been a great audience. I enjoyed being here and look forward to a time when you can be together in one space.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.